The rain hammered against the corrugated metal roof of Martinez's auto, repair like bullets. Each dropped percussion in the symphony of the storm. Elena Martinez wiped her oil-stained hands on her coveralls and glanced at the clock mounted above her workbench. Nearly midnight. She should have closed hours ago, but the transmission on Mrs. Chen's sedan had fought her every step of the way, and Elena never left a job half-finished. Her daughter, Sophie, was safe at her mother's house for the night, which meant Elena could work as late as she needed without guilt gnawing at her conscience. Single motherhood had taught her to grab every opportunity with both hands, even if those hands were perpetually stained with grease and regret. The bang on the side door made her jump, her wrench clattering to the concrete floor. Nobody came calling at this hour, especially not in this neighborhood that straddled the line between working-class respectability and something darker. Elena's heart hammered as she approached the door, her hand instinctively reaching for the tire iron she kept nearby. "We're closed," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. "Please." The word came muffled through the metal door, barely audible over the storm. "I need help." Elena hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to pretend she hadn't heard anything. But that voice carried something that bypassed logic. Desperation, yes, but also authority, the kind that came from a man unused to begging. Against her better judgment, she unlocked the door and cracked it open. The man who nearly fell through the entrance was not what she expected. Despite the blood soaking through his expensive shirt and the rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead, he carried himself with a lethal grace. His eyes, even glazed with pain, assessed her with an intelligence that made her breath catch. This was not a man who had stumbled here by accident. This was a predator seeking temporary shelter. "I can't go to a hospital," he said, his accent cultured, his words clipped with pain. "I just need somewhere to—" His legs buckled. Elena moved on instinct, catching before he hit the ground, grunting under his weight. For a lean man, he was solid muscle and bone, and it took all her strength to half-drag, half-guide him to the small office at the back of her shop. "Jesus Christ," she muttered, lowering him onto the old couch that had seen better days. "What kind of trouble are you in?" His laugh was bitter. "The terminal kind if you turn me away." Elena should have called the police, should have pushed him back out into the storm and locked the door behind him. Instead, she found herself grabbing her first aid kit, the one she kept stocked better than most people's medicine cabinets, because Sophie was 7 and fearless and constantly scraped up from her adventures. "Take off your shirt," she ordered, falling into the practical mindset that had carried her through her ex-husband's abandonment, through poverty, through every crisis that had tried to break her. He complied, wincing as he peeled the blood-soaked fabric from his skin. The wound in his side was a furrow deep enough to bleed profusely, but not deep enough to have hit anything vital. A bullet graze, she realized with chill. "You need real medical attention," she said quietly. "What I need is for no one to know I'm here." His eyes met hers, dark and fathomless. "Can you help me or not?" Elena had always been a terrible judge of danger. She'd married Danny thinking his wildness would calm down, that love would anchor him. She'd been catastrophically wrong. But this man, bleeding on her couch with death in his eyes and desperation in his voice, didn't trigger the same alarms. Different kind of dangerous. Her mind whispered. "I'm not a doctor," she said, opening the kit. "You have steady hands. That's all I need." She cleaned the wound with antiseptic. Her touch is gentle, as she could manage while he hissed through his teeth. Up close, she could see the scars that decorated his torso. A road map of violence survived. This was not his first brush with death. "What's your name?" she asked, more to distract him than because she wanted to know. Knowing made it personal. Personal was dangerous. "Does it matter?" "I guess not." She pressed gauze against the wound, taping it down with practiced efficiency. "You can stay tonight. The storm's too bad for you to go anywhere anyway. But in the morning, you leave." "Agreed." His hand caught her wrist, his grip surprisingly gentle despite his strength. "Thank you." The touch sent electricity up her arm, a sensation she hadn't felt in years. Elena pulled away quickly, busying herself with packing up the first aid kit. "There's a bathroom through that door if you need to clean up. I'll get you some water and something for the pain." When she returned with both, he'd managed to stand, leaning against her desk with barely concealed exhaustion. In the harsh fluorescent light, she could see him more clearly. The sharp line of his jaw, the aristocratic nose slightly crooked from an old break, the mouth that might have been sensual if it wasn't pressed into a hard line of pain. "You should rest," she said, handing him the water and pills. "I should leave before I bring trouble to your door. Too late for that now." She gestured to the couch. "Sleep. I'll keep working. If anyone comes looking, I'll wake you. You don't know what you're risking." Elena shrugged, exhaustion suddenly crashing over her. "I stopped making smart decisions a long time ago. What's one more?" She returned to the shop floor, but concentration eluded her. Her mind kept drifting to the stranger sleeping in her office, to the blood she'd wiped from his skin, to the way he'd looked at her, not with the leering interest she was used to from customers, but with something closer to respect. The storm had gentled to a steady rain by the time she finally admitted defeat and cleaned up her tools. 3 a.m, according to the clock. She should go home, but leaving him here alone felt wrong somehow, like abandoning a wounded animal. Instead, she made coffee in the ancient pot she kept in the office, moving quietly so as not to wake him. He slept like someone who'd learned to rest with one eye open, his breathing steady but shallow, his body never fully relaxing. Elena settled into her desk chair with her coffee and a stack of invoices she'd been avoiding. Numbers had never been her strong suit, but they demanded attention whether she liked it or not. The shop barely kept its head above water most months, and with Sophie needing new shoes and the rent increase and, "You're still here." She startled, coffee sloshing onto an invoice. He'd woken silently, now sitting up on the couch and watching her with those unsettling dark eyes. "Couldn't sleep," she lied. "How's the pain?" "Manageable." He stood slowly, testing his balance. "I should go before light. It's still dark out, and it's Sunday. The shop's closed. You can rest a few more hours. Why are you helping me?" The question hung between them, laden with suspicion and something else, curiosity, maybe, or the beginning of trust. Elena considered lying, offering some platitude about basic human decency. But something about this man demanded honesty, as if he could see through pretense to the truth beneath. "Because I know what it's like to need help and have nowhere to turn," she said finally. "And because my daughter isn't here, which means I'm only risking myself." "Your daughter?" His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "How old?" 7. "She's at my mother's." Elena smiled despite herself, the way she always did when thinking of Sophie. Too smart for her own good and completely fearless. "Drives me crazy." "She's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one." They lapsed into silence, but it was companionable rather than awkward. He lowered himself back onto the couch, and Elena returned to her invoices, hyper-aware of his presence even when she wasn't looking at him. Dawn broke gray and reluctant, the rain having finally stopped. Elena had dozed off at some point, her head pillowed on her arms at the desk. She woke to find a blanket draped over her shoulders, the threadbare thing she kept on the couch for cold nights. He stood at the window, his back to her, shoulders tense as he stared out at the empty street. "Thank you," Elena said softly, "for the blanket. Thank you for the shelter." He turned, and in the pale morning light, she saw the truth written in his features. This was not a man accustomed to kindness without strings attached. "I need to ask you something." Dread pooled in her stomach. "What?" "When they come looking for me, and they will, tell them you never saw me. Tell them your shop was locked all night. Can you do that?" "Who's they?" His smile was sharp enough to cut. "People who make me look like a saint. Please, just forget I was ever here." Before Elena could respond, the sound of engines rumbled through the morning quiet. Not one engine. Many. Too many. He moved to the window, his entire body going rigid. "Murda." Elena didn't speak Italian, but she understood the curse anyway. She joined him at the window and felt her blood turn to ice. SUVs lined the street, black and gleaming and identical, stretching as far as she could see in both directions. She counted 10, then 20, then gave up. They blocked off the entire block, trapping her shop in a corridor of steel and tinted windows. "I'm sorry," he said, and the regret in his voice sounded genuine. "I'm so sorry." Men emerged from vehicles, all dressed in dark suits despite the early hour, all moving with military precision. They formed a perimeter around the shop, conspicuously armed, conspicuously unconcerned about witnesses. "What the hell is this?" Elena's voice came out strangled. "This is my family coming to collect me." He turned to face her, and she saw resignation and determination warring in his expression. "And this is where I tell you the truth. My name is Dante Vittorio, and your life just became very complicated." The name meant nothing to Elena, but his tone suggested it should. Before she could ask any questions, the front door of her shop, locked, she'd made sure of that, simply opened. A man walked through, lockpicks in hand, followed by half a dozen others who fanned out through her workspace with professional efficiency. "Stay behind me," Dante ordered, positioning himself between Elena and the intruders. "Boss," one of them said, relief evident in his voice. "Thank God. We've been searching all night." "I'm aware, Marco." Dante's voice had transformed, taking on a quality of command that made even Elena want to straighten to attention. "Give me and the lady a moment." The men retreated without argument. Though they didn't leave the shop, Elena could feel their eyes on her, assessing, calculating her threat level. "I need you to understand something," Dante said, turning back to her. "The people I was running from last night, they're still out there, and now they know I was here, which means they know about you. I don't understand." Elena's mind raced, trying to piece together a picture from fragments of truth. "Who are you?" "I told you. Dante Vittorio." He paused, weighing his words. "My family controls everything from the docks to downtown. Imports, exports, protection, real estate. The legitimate and the less so." The implication crashed over her like a wave. "You're mafia." "I prefer businessman, but yes, essentially." His mouth twisted. "The Segretti family decided they wanted what we have. Last night was their opening move. They failed, obviously, but they now know I was wounded, separated from my security, and they know I found shelter somewhere in this neighborhood." Elena's legs felt weak. She grabbed the edge of her desk for support. "They'll come here. They will." Dante moved closer, his intensity almost frightening. "Which is why you can't stay here. Pack what you need. You and your daughter are coming with me." "Like hell." "Listen to me." He gripped her shoulders, not roughly, but firmly enough to make her focus. "They will tear this place apart looking for information. They will hurt you to get to me. They will use your daughter as leverage. This is not a negotiation. You protected me last night, and now I protect you. I didn't ask for your protection. You gave me mercy when I needed it. That debt is not one I take lightly." His eyes softened. "I will keep you safe, Elena Martinez. You and your daughter. You have my word." The use of her full name jarred her. "How do you know?" "The business license on your wall." He released her shoulders, stepping back. "I pay attention to details. It's how I've stayed alive this long." One of his men appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we need to move." Segretti's scouts were spotted 6 blocks away. Dante's expression hardened. "Elena, choose. Come with me, or take your chances with them. But make the choice now." Every rational thought screamed at her to refuse, to call the police, to do anything but get further entangled with this dangerous man. But beneath the fear, a cold logic whispered that he was right. She'd seen his face, treated as wound, sheltered him. In whatever violent world he inhabited, that made her a loose end. "I need to get Sophie," she said. "Give me your mother's address. I'll send men I trust." "Absolutely not. If I'm doing this, I'm getting my daughter myself." Dante studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Marco, 2 cars on Mrs. Martinez. Keep them back far enough not to spook the grandmother, but close enough to intervene if necessary." "Boss!" "Do it." The command brooked no argument. The next hour passed in a blur. Elena called her mother, inventing a story about a last-minute opportunity to take Sophie to the beach. Could she pack the girl an overnight bag? Her mother, blessedly, asked few questions. She'd learned long ago that her daughter's life was complicated in ways she couldn't help. Sophie bounced out her grandmother's house with her usual enthusiasm, pigtails flying, not noticing the black SUVs that followed at a discreet distance. "Mama!" She threw herself into Elena's arms. "Abuela said we're going on an adventure." "Something like that, baby." Elena strapped her into the car seat, forcing her hands not to shake. "But first we need to make a quick stop." The quick stop turned out to be an estate that made Elena's jaw drop. Wrought iron gates opened onto a winding drive that led to a house. No, a mansion that belonged in architectural magazines. Manicured lawns stretched in every direction, and the building itself was all stone and glass and old-world elegance. "Whoa!" Sophie breathed, eyes wide. "Is this a castle?" "Close enough," Dante said from where he materialized beside their car. In the daylight, wearing fresh clothes, the blood and desperation wash away, he looked like exactly what he was, power personified. "Welcome to Casa Vittorio." A woman emerged from the house, older, elegant, with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Dante, then at Elena and Sophie, and her expression shifted through a dozen emotions too quickly to read. "Dante," she said, her accent thicker than his. "What have you done?" "What I had to. Nah." He moved to Elena's side, a gesture that felt protective. "This is Elena Martinez and her daughter Sophie. They're under our protection. Elena, this is my grandmother, Lucia Vittorio." Lucia's gaze softened when it landed on Sophie. "Come, child. You must be hungry. We have fresh pastries in the kitchen." Sophie looked to Elena for permission. The fear must have shown in her eyes because her daughter's smile faltered. "It's okay, baby. Go ahead. I'll be right behind you." As Lucia led Sophie away, chatting to her in a warm mixture of English and Italian, Dante guided Elena to a study off the main entrance. The room was all dark wood and leather, books lining the walls, a massive desk dominating the space. "I know you're frightened," he began. "Frightened doesn't cover it." Elena's voice shook with anger and fear in equal measure. "You've dragged my daughter into whatever war you're fighting. Do you understand that? She's 7 years old." "I understand." He poured amber liquid into 2 glasses, offering her one. She took it and downed it in one burning gulp. "Which is why I give you my word, sworn on my father's grave, that no harm will come to either of you. The Vittorio family protects its own. We're not your family. You became my responsibility the moment you opened that door." He set his untouched drink aside. "Elena, look at me. I need you to understand something. In my world, loyalty is everything. You showed me loyalty when you had no reason to, when doing so put you at risk. That means something. That means everything. I didn't do it for loyalty. I did it because you were bleeding. Even better." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Mercy is rarer than loyalty and infinitely more valuable." Footsteps in the hallway announced Marco's arrival. "Boss, perimeter secure. Segretti's men hit the auto shop 20 minutes ago. Tore the place apart." Elena's heart sank. Her shop, her livelihood, everything she built from nothing. Dante's expression darkened. "How bad?" "Bad." They weren't subtle about sending a message. "Rebuild it," Dante ordered. "Everything better than before. And bill it to my personal account." "That's not necessary," Elena started. "It is." His tone left no room for argument. "They destroyed your property because of me. I make it right. That's how this works." "How it works? I don't understand any of this." Dante dismissed Marco with a gesture and turned his full attention to Elena. When he looked at her like that, intense and unwavering, she felt simultaneously exposed and protected. "The rules of my world," he said, "they're simple but absolute. Loyalty is rewarded. Betrayal is punished. Debts are repaid. Always. And what am I? A debt. You're the woman who saved my life. That makes you..." He paused, seeming to search for the right word. "Precious, invaluable, under my protection for as long as you need it." The weight of his words settled over her. This wasn't a temporary arrangement. This was a fundamental shift in her reality. I want my life back, she whispered. I know, and you'll have it, I promise. But first, we need to end this war with the Segretis. Until then, you and Sophie stay here, where you're safe. The following days unfolded like a surreal dream. Casa Vittorio operated like a small kingdom, with Dante as its undisputed ruler. Men came and went at all hours, receiving orders, delivering reports. Elena caught glimpses of the machinery of his organization. Legitimate businesses mixed with less legal operations, all running with ruthless efficiency. Sophie adapted with the resilience of childhood, delighted by Lucia's attention and the sprawling grounds to explore. She seemed to view the whole thing as an extended vacation, and Elena didn't have the heart to shatter her innocence with the truth. Dante himself was a study in contrasts. With his men, he was commanding, occasionally brutal in his decisiveness. With Lucia, he showed a tenderness that surprised Elena. And with Sophie, he was unexpectedly gentle, tolerating her endless questions with a patience she wouldn't have predicted. "Why do you have so many cars?" Sophie asked one afternoon, having discovered the garage that housed Dante's collection. "Because I like them," he answered simply, crouching to her level. "Do you want to see inside one?" Sophie's enthusiastic yes led to an impromptu tour, with Dante explaining each vehicle with the pride of a true collector. Elena watched from the doorway, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. "He's good with her," Lucia said, appearing at Elena's elbow with the silent grace of someone who perfected the art of observation. "Dante loves children. It's part of why he'll never have any of his own." "Why not?" Lucia's smile was sad. "Because he knows what kind of father a man in his position would be. Distant, dangerous, a target painted on any child's back. He would never willingly bring a child into this life." Yet here was Sophie, pigtails bouncing as Dante lifted her into the driver's seat of a vintage Ferrari, letting her pretend to drive while making engine noises. The contrast between his deadly reputation and his gentleness with her daughter made Elena's carefully constructed defenses crack. That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep in the guest room that had become theirs, Elena found Dante on the terrace overlooking the grounds. He stood at the railing, a glass of wine in hand, staring out at the darkness. "Can't sleep?" she asked, joining him. "Occupational hazard." He offered her the wine. She took a sip, their fingers brushing in exchange. "How's Sophie adjusting?" "Too well. She thinks this is all an adventure." Elena leaned against the railing, exhaustion weighing on her. "I keep waiting for her to ask when we're going home, but she's too enchanted by your grandmother's cooking in the pool. Children are resilient. She shouldn't have to be. Not about this." Elena turned to face him fully. "When does this end, Dante? When can we go home?" "Soon. The Segretis are making mistakes, getting desperate. We're closing in on their leadership." He set the wine aside, his attention shifting fully to her. "I'm sorry you're caught in this." "So you said." "I mean it. You deserve better than to be collateral damage in someone else's war." Elena studied him in the moonlight, this dangerous man who'd somehow become the center of her chaotic new reality. "Who are you really, beneath the title and the power?" He considered the question, his expression unreadable. "I'm the man who inherited an empire I never wanted. I'm my father's son, whether I like it or not. I'm someone who makes terrible choices for what I believe are good reasons." He met her eyes. "I'm someone who wishes he'd taken a different path, but knows it's too late to turn back." "It's never too late." Spoken like someone who still has choices. His smile was bitter. "I stopped having those a long time ago." "That's not true. You chose to protect us." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did. Because despite everything, despite what I've become, I still remember what it means to be human. You reminded me of that." The moment stretched between them, charged with an awareness Elena had been trying to ignore. He was dangerous, complicated, everything she should avoid. But he was also the man who tucked a blanket around her when she fell asleep, who made her daughter laugh, who looked at her like she was something precious rather than convenient. "Elena," he said softly, her name a caress in his accented voice. "I need you to know something. When this is over, when you're safe, I won't hold you here. You'll be free to go, to rebuild your life. But until then..." Until then, having you here, seeing you every day, knowing you're safe, it's become more important to me than it should be. Her breath caught. Dante, I'm not asking for anything, he interrupted. I'm just telling you the truth. You deserve that much. Before Elena could respond, Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Boss, we have a problem. Dante's demeanor shifted instantly. All business. What kind of problem? Segretti's men grabbed Antonio. They're demanding a meeting. You alone, or they start sending pieces of him back. Elena's blood ran cold. Dante's expression was carved from stone. When and where? Tomorrow night. The old warehouse district. It's a trap, Elena said, her voice tight with fear she didn't want to examine too closely. Obviously. Dante's smile was sharp and cold, which is why I'm going to spring it. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Dante spent it in meetings planning, his organization mobilizing with military precision. Elena tried to keep Sophie occupied, to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but her mind kept drifting to the coming night. When evening fell, she found herself outside Dante's study, her hand raised a knock, her heart pounding. Come in, Elena, he called before she could make contact with the door. She entered to find him checking weapons with casual expertise that should have frightened her more than it did. You're going through with it, she said. I have to. Antonio is loyal. I don't abandon my people. Even if it gets you killed? Especially then. Loyalty demands loyalty. He holstered a gun with practiced ease. But I don't intend to die tonight. Elena moved closer, drawn by some force she didn't understand. You can't guarantee that. No, he agreed. I can't. Then why go? Because it's who I am. Because my men need to know I'll walk through fire for them. Because he stopped, his jaw tightening. Because I've taken more lives than I can count, and saving one might tip the scales toward redemption, even if only slightly. Elena's throat tightened. You think you're beyond redemption? I know I am. I don't believe that. She closed the distance between them, acting on instinct. I see you with Sophie, with Lucia, with me. Whatever else you are, you're capable of kindness, of protection. That has to count for something. He stared at her, something raw and vulnerable flickering in his eyes. You see what you want to see. I see what's there. His hand came up, hesitating before cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. You shouldn't care whether I live or die. I've complicated your life, put your daughter at risk, dragged you into a world you wanted no part of. I know. And yet you're here, looking at me like... He shook his head. I can't do this to you. Can't let you feel something for a man who might not survive the night. Too late. The admission escaped before Elena could stop it. I already do. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable. Dante's mouth found hers with a desperation that matched her own, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer. Elena melted into him, tasting wine and danger and something that might have been hope. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. When you come back, she interrupted, we'll figure this out. Whatever this is, it's complicated. Everything about you is complicated. I think I'm getting used to it. His laugh was soft, genuine. You're remarkable, do you know that? I'm practical. There's a difference. No, he said, pulling back to look at her fully. You're remarkable. Marco's discreet cough from the doorway broke the moment. Boss, it's time. Dante's expression hardened, the tender man disappearing behind a mask of command. He pressed one more kiss to Elena's forehead. Stay inside. Lucia knows what to do if anything goes wrong. Dante, I'll come back, he promised. I have something worth coming back to now. Then he was gone, leaving Elena standing in the study with the taste of him still on her lips and terror freezing her blood. The hours that followed were torture. Lucia tried to distract her with conversation, but Elena couldn't focus. She checked on Sophie every 20 minutes, reassuring herself that her daughter was safe and sleeping peacefully, unaware of the violence unfolding somewhere in the city. When the sound of engines finally rumbled up the drive well past midnight, Elena was on the terrace in seconds. SUVs poured through the gates, and her heart didn't start beating properly again until she saw Dante emerge from the lead vehicle, bloodied but walking. She ran to him without thinking, and he caught her, wincing. "You're hurt," she said, her hands frantically checking him for injuries. "Antonio's safe. That's what matters." He let her fuss over him for a moment before capturing her hands. "It's over, Elena. Segretti's dead. His organization is scattered. The war is finished. Then we can go home?" Something in his expression made her pause. "You can. Your shop has been rebuilt. Your life is waiting for you. But, I'm asking you to consider staying. Not forever, not as a prisoner, but as—" He struggled with the words. "As someone important to me. As someone I want in my life, if you'll have me in yours." Elena stared at him, this complicated, dangerous, unexpectedly tender man who'd crashed into her life and turned everything upside down. "You're asking me to choose you, to choose this world. I'm asking you to give us a chance, to see if what we have is real or just proximity and adrenaline." His grip on her hands tightened. "But I'm also telling you that you're free to walk away. I'll protect you from any fallout. Make sure you and Sophie want for nothing. No strings, no obligations, just my gratitude for saving my life." It should have been an easy choice. Safety, normalcy, the life she'd built with her own hands. But when Elena looked at Dante, she saw something she hadn't allowed herself to hope for, a future that was more than just survival. "I can't answer that tonight," she said finally. "This is too big, too fast. I need time to think." "Take all the time you need." He released her hands, stepping back despite the obvious reluctance. "But know this, however long you need, whatever you decide, I'll wait, and I'll respect your choice." The next few days were strange, existing in the space between decisions. Dante kept his distance, giving Elena room to think, though she felt his gaze on her constantly. Lucia offered wisdom in the form of stories about Dante's father, about the weight of legacy and the possibility of change. Sophie, oblivious of the undercurrents, continued to thrive, having adopted Lucia as a surrogate grandmother and the estate as her personal playground. It was watching them together, Sophie teaching Lucia to draw princesses while Dante looked on with undisguised affection, that Elena realized the truth. She'd spent years building walls, protecting herself and Sophie from further hurt. But walls kept out the bad and the good in equal measure. She found Dante in the garage, of all places, working on one of his cars with an absorption that reminded her of herself in her shop. "You work on them yourself?" she asked, announcing her presence. He looked up, surprise flickering across his features. "When I can, it's meditative." "I know what you mean." She moved closer, examining his work with a mechanic's eye. "You're doing that wrong. The timing belt needs more tension." "Show me." So she did, slipping naturally into the rhythm of instruction, their bodies close in confined space, oil and metal and possibility in the air between them. "I've made my decision," she said when the repair was finished, both of them washing grease from their hands at the garage sink. Dante went very still. "And I'm not saying yes to everything. This world you live in, the violence and danger, I can't fully embrace that. And Sophie comes first. Always. I understand. I'm not finished." She turned to face him fully. "But I'm saying yes to getting to know you. The real you, not the boss or the mafia prince or whatever title people give you. I'm saying yes to seeing if this thing between us can survive outside a crisis. I'm saying yes to the possibility of us." Hope transformed his features, making him look years younger. "That's more than I deserve." "Probably, but it's what I'm offering." He pulled her close, careful of her clean hands, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her believe in second chances. "We'll take it slow," he promised. "Let Sophie adjust. Figure out how to blend your world and mine. I'll spend more time at the shop. Turns out I miss working on cars. You can teach me to be a better mechanic, and I'll teach you Italian. We'll find our rhythm. What if we can't? What if this doesn't work? Then we'll have tried, and you'll still have your shop and your independence. I told you, no strings. Just possibility. Elena let herself lean into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. It was terrifying, this leap into the unknown, but it was also exhilarating. Mama! Sophie's voice echoed through the garage. Nanasa's dinner's ready and... Oh! She stopped short, taking in the scene with wide eyes. Are you guys in love? Elena's face flamed, but Dante just laughed. Come here, Piccolina. Let me tell you something about love. He crouched to Sophie's level, pulling her into a conspiratorial huddle that included Elena. Love is complicated and messy and scary, but it's also the most important thing in the world. So when you find it, even if it comes at the wrong time with the wrong person in the wrong way, you hold on to it. You fight for it. You let it change you. Understand? Sophie nodded solemnly. So you do love my mama? I'm working on it, he said, glancing up at Elena with an expression that made her breath catch. But I think I'm getting close. Sophie seemed satisfied with this answer. She grabbed both their hands, tugging them toward the house. Come on. Nana made that pasta you like, Mama, and she said I could help set the table with the fancy plates. As they walked toward the warmth and light spilling from the mansion's windows, Elena felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty. She wasn't naive enough to think this path would be smooth, but hope, genuine and fragile and real. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. True to his word, Dante spent time at the rebuilt auto shop, learning the trade with the same intensity he brought to everything. He had a natural aptitude for mechanics, his hands steady and sure as Elena taught him the intricacies of engines and transmissions. You're not bad at this, she admitted one afternoon, watching him diagnose an issue with Mrs. Chen's sedan with minimal guidance. I had a good teacher. He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag, oil smudging his cheek. Without thinking, Elena reached up to wipe it away, and he caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Thank you. For what? For giving me this. A reason to be someone other than what I was born to be, even if just for a few hours a day. The shop became their sanctuary, a space with a way to his world couldn't fully reach. Customers came and went, none the wiser that the man efficiently changing their oil had once ordered executions with the same calm competence. But reality always intruded. There were still late-night phone calls that pulled Dante away, still meetings he couldn't discuss, still the armed presence that followed them everywhere, discreet but constant. Elena learned to live with the dichotomy. Mornings at the shop covered in grease, evenings at the estate surrounded by wealth and danger. Sophie thrived in both worlds with the adaptability of childhood. She spent afternoons helping Elena in the shop, learning to identify tools and basic maintenance. Evenings found her with Lucia, learning Italian and family recipes, or with Dante, who taught her chess with endless patience. You're good with her, Elena said one evening, watching Dante guide Sophie through a complex move on the board. She makes it easy. He glanced up, his expression soft. She reminds me of what's worth protecting, of why any of this matters. 3 months after that first desperate night in her shop, Elena woke to find Dante gone from the bed they'd been tentatively sharing. Panic flared before she saw the note on his pillow. Terrace, come find me. She wrapped herself in a robe and padded through the silent house. Dawn was just breaking, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Dante stood at the railing, dressed simply in jeans and a shirt, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. Couldn't sleep? She asked, sliding under his arm when he lifted it in invitation. Thinking, he corrected, about the future. Something in his tone made her pulse quicken. What about it? I've made some changes. Marco is taking over more of the day-to-day operations. I'm stepping back from the darker aspects of the business, focusing on the legitimate enterprises. He turned to face her fully. I can't walk away entirely. That's not how this works. But I can choose what kind of man I want to be going forward. Dante, let me finish. He took her hands, his grip warm and steady. You and Sophie, you've given me something I thought I'd lost forever, a reason to be better. I'm not asking you to marry into this life. Not yet. Maybe not ever, if that's what you need. But I'm asking you to believe that I can change, that we can build something real together. Elena's throat tightened with emotion. I already believe that. I've seen you change over these months. Seen you choose differently. Then let me ask you something else. He released one hand to cup her cheek, moving properly, not as a guest, not as someone under protection, but as my partner. Help me figure out how to balance both worlds. Teach me to be the man you and Sophie deserve. You're already that man, she whispered. You just needed to believe it. The kiss was gentle, full of promise rather than passion, a seal on the future they were choosing together. Mama, Dante. Sophie's voice shattered the moment as she burst onto the terrace. Pajamas askew, excitement radiating from her small frame. Nanasas were having pancakes, and I could make the smiley faces. Dante scooped her up, making her shriek with laughter. Then we better hurry before she starts without us. As they walked inside together, a makeshift family bound by choice rather than blood, Elena felt the last of her fear release. This wasn't the life she'd imagined. It was complicated and sometimes dangerous and would require constant navigation between two very different worlds. But watching Dante spin Sophie around while Lucia scolded them both affectionately in Italian, seeing the joy on her daughter's face and the peace in Dante's eyes, Elena knew they found something rare and precious. The months turned to a year, then two. The shop flourished with Dante's financial backing, but Elena's unwavering control. She hired staff, expanded services, became a fixture in the community once again. The whispers about her relationship with Dante Vittorio never fully died, but they lost their sharp edges when people saw them together. The notorious Mafia Boss who looked at the mechanic like she hung the moon, and the single mother who'd somehow tamed the untamable. Sophie started school, bright and fearless and loved fiercely by the unconventional family she'd gained. She called Lucia Nana, without hesitation, and had taken calling Dante Dante with a familiar affection that made his soldiers do double takes. One evening, 2 years after that fateful stormy night, Elena found herself back in her shop after hours. She'd sent her staff home early, needing the familiar solitude of working with her hands. The transmission she'd been fighting all day finally yielded to her expertise, and she was packing up her tools when the door opened. Dante stood in the entrance, backlit by the setting sun, and for a moment Elena was transported back to that night, when he'd stumbled through seeking shelter. Déjà vu? He asked, reading her expression with the ease of long familiarity. Something like that. She set down her tools, wiping her hands. What brings you by? Can't I visit my favorite mechanic? He moved into the shop, his footsteps echoing in the empty space, and pulled something from his pocket. Actually, I came to ask you something. The small box made Elena's heart stutter. Dante, I know we said we'd take it slow, and we have. 2 years of slow, of learning each other, of building something real. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the light, elegant and understated, exactly her style. But I don't want slow anymore. Elena, I want forever. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I want to adopt Sophie officially, give her my name and protection. I want to build a life where grease-stained coveralls and Italian suits exist side by side. Elena's vision blurred with tears. You've really thought this through. I've thought of nothing else for months. He took her hand, slipping the ring onto her finger where it settled like it belonged. You saved my life that night, but you did more than that. You gave me a reason to deserve the life you saved. Marry me, Elena. Let me spend the rest of my days proving I'm worthy of that gift. She should have needed time to think, should have weighed the complications and dangers that would always exist on the periphery of their lives. But standing in her shop with this man who'd learned to rebuild engines and rebuild himself, Elena knew there was only one answer. Yes. She laughed through her tears as he pulled her close. Yes, I'll marry you, but I'm keeping my shop and my independence, and Sophie's education comes first, and... He silenced her with a kiss, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I wouldn't have it any other way. You're not mine to possess, Elena. You're mine to love. There's a difference. When did you get so wise? When I met a woman brave enough to shelter a stranger in a storm. He pulled back, his smile transforming his face from dangerous to devastating. Should we go tell Sophie? She's been asking when I'm going to officially become her dad. She has... Apparently, having separate last names is confusing, and she wants everyone to know we're a real family. His expression softened. Smart kid. They locked up the shop together, hands intertwined, and drove back to the estate that had become home. Sophie met them at the door, took one look at Elena's ring, and released a shriek of delight that brought Lucia running. Finally, Sophie threw herself at Dante. Does this mean I can call you Dad now? Dante's eyes met Elena's over Sophie's head, and the vulnerability there made Elena's heart ache. If you want to, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I want to. Hi, Dad. The word, so simple, so profound, broke something in Dante. He sank to his knees, pulling Sophie into a fierce embrace, his shoulders shaking. Elena knelt beside them, wrapping her arms around them both, and Lucia completed the circle, her hands gentle on their heads as she murmured blessings in Italian. The wedding, when it came 6 months later, was a study in contrasts. Elena wore a simple dress that allowed her to move freely, her hands scrubbed clean of oil but her spirit unchanged. Dante wore a suit that cost more than most cars, but his eyes held only softness as she walked down the aisle of the estate's garden toward him. Sophie served as flower girl, taking her duty seriously, while Lucia dabbed at her eyes and Marco stood as Dante's best man, looking uncomfortable in formal wear but fiercely proud. The ceremony was small, intimate, a blend of traditions from both their worlds. The reception that followed was larger, a necessary concession to Dante's position, but Elena found she didn't mind. These people, dangerous, complicated, loyal to a fault, had become her extended family. Later, as they danced under strings of lights, while Sophie spun with Marco's daughters, Dante pulled Elena close. Any regrets? He murmured against her ear. Only one. She pulled back to look at him. That I can't go back and tell the version of me from that stormy night that everything turns out better than okay. That the man bleeding on her couch would become her whole world. Would she have believed you? No, I barely believe it now. Elena smiled, rising on her toes to kiss him. But I'm grateful every day that I opened that door. So am I? He spun her, making her laugh. So am I? Years would pass, bringing challenges and joy in equal measure. The shop would expand into a chain, Elena's expertise becoming legendary. Dante would continue to walk the line between his old world and new, gradually shifting the family business toward legitimacy, his father's empire transforming under his guidance. Sophie would grow up loved and protected, strong and fearless like her mother, thoughtful and strategic like her adoptive father. She'd eventually take over the auto shop, applying an MBA to her mother's mechanical genius, never forgetting where she came from. But that was the future, unwritten and full of possibility. In the present, under the stars with music swirling around them and family looking on, Elena Martinez Vittorio, mechanic, wife, mother, the woman who'd sheltered a monster and found man, held her husband close and knew she'd made the right choice. Love, it turned out, wasn't always safe or simple. Sometimes it arrived bleeding in a storm, desperate and dangerous. Sometimes it required courage and compromise and constant navigation between worlds that should never touch. But when it was real, when it was fought for and chosen daily, when it transformed everyone it touched, that kind of love was worth every risk. The night had started with 100 SUVs outside her shop, a show of force that should have been a threat. Instead, it had been the beginning of everything that mattered. Elena had learned to judge danger better since then, but she'd also learned that sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the right one. And sometimes, just sometimes, mercy was repaid with love that endured. As Dante twirled her across the dance floor, past their daughter's laughter and their grandmother's tears of joy, past the armed guards who protected their perimeter and the guests who'd come to celebrate, Elena sent a silent thank you to the version of herself who'd opened that door on a stormy night. That woman had been scared and alone and just trying to survive. This woman was loved and protected and truly living, all because she'd chosen mercy over fear, possibility over safety, love over logic. And she'd do it all again in a heartbeat. The music swelled. carrying them into their future, and Elena leaned into Dante's embrace, finally completely home.